so much to everyone for tuning in today. This is my first ever podcast, and so I'm really hoping that I do it some justice. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sofia Oragano, and I am a Senior Director at Synergy. We are a global accommodation provider, and my remit is really overseeing the EMEA and the Asia Pacific geography. So, as far as this podcast is concerned, we are going to be talking about all things India. And really, the central part of the discussion is going to be focused on what is driving the surge in demand in India, as well as the trends within the global mobility and accommodation space. And so at Synergy, we've really seen an explosion in terms of demand, in terms of requests, and also interest within this country. And so how do we as an industry ensure that we're really geared up for its continued growth to make sure that we are successful? And so why India? I think for me, India is a land of opportunity, and I have stolen that from a Euro conference where there was a great session on the fact that it's really the beating heart of the world's talent. And so when you think about the scale and the size of India, it makes up an eighth of the world. It's surpassed China with the highest population. And really that equates to 18% of the world's population. So it is a country that fills me with sheer excitement. And so for this podcast, we really want to spark your passion, fuel your curiosity, and tackle industry challenges as well as opportunity. I am delighted to welcome our first guest, Mr. Nowzad Wadia. Nowzad, I'll turn it over to you. If you could just give a brief introduction on your role, and thank you so much for joining today.
Sure, Sophia. Thank you for having me. And just taking a leaf out of your book, this is my very first podcast as well. So like two novices trying out this new medium to generate, pass on information, give some insights. Yeah, it's fun. So a little bit about me, close to 15 years of relocation experience, of which last 5 years has been with Graebel. I was the employee number one for Graebel in India, and I lead the India office as a site leader, and my official title would be Senior Director Relocations for India. And I look forward to sharing a few insights on the topic that we are going to talk about on how India has emerged as this place where, as a land of opportunity, as you rightly said, from a temp accommodation, or when we look at temp accommodation, it's typically we look at relocations, but let's broaden our spectrum towards business travelers, towards all sort of temporary accommodation that we are seeing all around, mushrooming all over us. And then, yeah, I look forward to having this conversation with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Nowzad. And I think you've already just touched on, temporary accommodation. The world has become so much bigger, hasn't it? I mean, we are seeing now business travel, global mobility projects. At the end of the day, I think our clients say accommodation is accommodation. It's a place where you rest your head regardless to that product type. So thank you for your amazing introduction and looking forward to the discussion. Before we dive into that, I do just want to ask you a couple of questions about what do you love the most about your job in global mobility?
Well, okay, I'll take a leaf from my North Star, Mr. Bill Graebel. So when he talks to us, he tells us that we are the fiduciary for the client that we are managing. And also we, as in the relocation industry, are the support system to the world's amazing talents who are relocating from one point to the other and who are at their vulnerable most while they are traveling. So we are the art and the science of moving. There are many technical aspects which are ruthless to the timetable, but then there are softer aspects that we have to understand from a person whose emotional background about moving from one location to the other. So it's that art and science which draws me to this wonderful niche industry that we all are in, and I love interacting with transferees, which I get a little less chance today as I used to a few years back, but I still take out time every year to manage a few files and have conversations with those individuals who place their trust in us and whom we assist in this very difficult time. So yeah, the human bonds, I would say, are the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the connection is everything, isn't it? And I know sometimes you get further and further removed from it as you kind of progress into different roles, but I'm a little bit the same. I still always love to kind of be involved with, the people really who are actually checking into our apartment to kind of get that connection. And like you say, it can be an emotional experience, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so one of the first things I really wanted us to discuss was about the trends that we're seeing across the country. And so I'm keen to kind of just get your standpoint on what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're anticipating.
Sure. So, from a trends perspective, a few years back, temporary accommodation was part of the C suite or part of senior manager who's relocating with his family internationally into a country like India. And they would need that 30 days or 60 days at times to get acquainted and ensure that their sea shipment comes in while the time they are staying in a supported environment of a temp accommodation. Slowly and steadily, we see this gradual shifting from an intra-country to an intra-country as well. Today, there are so many intern programs who use temporary accommodation as one of the benefits that attract talent towards them. So you have an intern program from a tech giant one, and you have an intern program from a tech giant to one who offers temp accommodation and provides that support, is likely to get the higher quality of manpower, likely to get more conversions from an intern to a new grad if that is what their KRA is from an intern program. Then you have these families who are relocating, say, within one city to another city for their job requirements. And I think we are seeing a more of intra-country program developing where the support is extended. Some time back, it was more cash oriented, saying, okay, you will get maybe 3 months salary worth for you to manage your relocation costs, and you are expected to be reporting in a city. Slowly, I see that some companies are providing that support, saying, okay, not necessarily only cash. We will give you that support through a proper channel or through a proper relocation management company and give you that assisted feel that you deserve during that journey. So a lot of variations, right from interns to senior leadership, are now utilizing this product called temp accommodation bookings, and I think that's a good way forward to enable folks to get the footing right in a new location and then springboard them into productivity at the workplace.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, from our standpoint, we're very much seeing domestic traveler move within India. And that within itself, has been something that's been really, really exciting and comes with a different set of criteria, a different set of budgets, a different set of kind of key to successes, really. So I think what you're saying, I love what you're saying about, the employees and the employers really looking at those interns to see, what is that top talent? Who do they want to have converted over? And how can we play a part in, the success of that in their productivity when it comes to the accommodation that we provide so they can just sort of step into their apartment and they can step into their internship. So I think it's been a change in the landscape, really, which has pushed the market in India to become even more established when it comes to the types of products that we are offering, because an international C-suite move is going to look very different to that of a domestic traveler. So we've really invested in our supply chain, our network, making sure that we have a fluid set of property partners that can accommodate, maybe multiple people within an apartment, as well as, some of the more luxury brands. So I think it's very, very interesting because on one hand, you are experiencing such growth in terms of the volume of bookings, but really at a much lower price point. So trying to be able to balance all those things is something that, as an industry, we're continuing to navigate. Okay, let's talk about Bangalore and Hyderabad and the sort of surge in talent that's emerging in these tech hubs. Can you describe some more about the demographics of these travelers?
Absolutely. So Bengaluru, as it's now called, is a melting pot of transient population because it was a lazy pensioners' paradise in the late 90s, early 2000s. Since 2000s, once Wipro landed over here as an Indian multinational where they started having their delivery center out of here, followed very soon by Infosys. We've seen this city mushroom into multiple organizations which are both Indian born and multinationals across the world coming here and making this their base. I think the biggest pull factor for Bangalore was a ready infrastructure in terms of the tech parks which were developing, and they developed them, and the weather per
Yeah.
se, because I think I can't highlight Bangalore without saying the weather, right? So it's synonymous. Both these terms come together. And being that there was a lot of concentration of multinational companies having their things out here, and again, it was a growing town. So what we see Bangalore today or Bengaluru today was not the Bengaluru of the past. It was much more smaller. It has radially expanded and incorporated other areas which were tertiary areas to the city as a part of the city municipality now to ensure that the infrastructure develops. So ready available space to expand, I would say, caused Bangalore to or Bengaluru to grow. Hyderabad was lagging behind because of the new state formation and the challenges you would have. As you know, a decade back, we had a new state called Telangana, which was now Hyderabad is the capital of that state. So as a newborn state with infrastructure coming up, I think Hyderabad is right for having a
Mm.
lot of companies to look at that location as well to expand and grow their presence and have availability of good quality talent to ensure. So anywhere these cities will have to produce talent or will have to produce infrastructure to hold that talent, and that's where the influx would happen. So today Bangalore is bustling, and there are far-flung areas which are now considered as part of Bengaluru from a governance perspective, which gets them a larger square footage to build these places and to cater to that talent.
Yeah, it's so exciting, isn't it? To see sort of some of that growth in terms of, the size of Bangalore. So I must say though, now that I didn't know it was ever a pensioner's paradise. So I've learned something new back in the late 90s. So that
Yep,
is really, really interesting to kind of see where it was then. The late 90s wasn't that long ago. I mean, it feels like, just 10 years ago. But
it's
you
25 years
think,
ago.
yeah, exactly. I know. Now we're showing our age.
Quarter of a century.
But in that space of time, based on just that analogy that you made now, it just shows really that this was in the plan for a very, very long time. And so just, very, very exciting. When you think about cost sensitivity across your portfolio, across your customers, what do you see as the contributing factors to why cost is so central to corporates in this day and age?
Well, if you look at cost sensitivity across the board, I think post COVID, everyone's tightened their belts when there are certain times of uncertainty. So during COVID, we had a surge where all the tech giants, because of the consumer behavior moving everything online, there were so many tech startups and mushrooming. The online business was mushrooming everywhere. So people were concentrating on that. Now, once we are behind, I would say fairly good statement to say that COVID is very much behind us. Then we have a different sort of challenge in terms of the consumer behavior. So if behavior of the consumer is more offline, there are many online sectors in established companies as well as in new startups which are seeing a decline. So when you see these phases of uncertainty, because when it was COVID, people thought everyone's going to go in the future and no one's going to interact with people. Everyone's going to be in their smartphones and going to work only in their silos. It's changing. So based on those different sectorial growths and sectorial constraints will include a certain amount of cost consciousness in it. When things are going good in terms of the end users product. Is it a technology or is it a product? If it's going well, people are going to be more relaxed on cost consciousness. Right now, I think cost consciousness would even paramount, say, customer satisfaction at times. Customer satisfaction is a very close second, but how can you get customer satisfaction at the level of, say, I can get a better cost as well. I wouldn't mind paying a little premium for a larger satisfaction, but a larger premium for a satisfaction is something that was a way of, I think, a decade back, but I don't see that happening anytime soon because good quality benchmarks are all set. If the property isn't having that base level of quality, it wouldn't survive the market. So that's where the cost consciousness comes in.
Yeah, it's such an interesting stance on it, really. Still that kind of hangover, despite the pandemic, well and truly being over, but the impact that it has, still in terms of
Correct.
some of the budgets and trying to recoup some of the lost money. And I think, a topic that I am really passionate about is always about balance because, there has to be a sense of transparency. Yes, we will always try to contain and drive costs, but we also, as suppliers, have a duty to be responsible in terms of the expectation setting. So, whether we're promoting people to come and see the accommodation, the main stakeholders, but your point about consumerism, I love it because as we have moved into a more tech-driven world, a more self-service world, we are seeing the consumer being, the guest, and really they are a big stakeholder in all of this. So I think the balance has shifted hugely too. And so I think, I always advocate for open conversations because at the end of the day, we can save costs, but we just have to make sure we're super transparent when it comes to the quality of the product, as long as it's safe, secure, convenient, and it's, there's full due diligence that's been applied. Because like you say, that's kind of number one until there's maybe an issue. And then the experience just is so important in terms of talent retention and the overall impression that it's giving. And so I love this part of the conversation, and I think it's something that everyone has to continue to work on. And I think with the investment in India in terms of property, it's only going to become more and more established as we talk about the growth of Bangalore, Hyderabad, but moving beyond that into some of the other second and third tier cities that are set for the future. So thank you for your take on that.
Sure. Think from us, it's already happening, Sophia. When I look at Bangalore, it's established for 25 years. I look at Hyderabad, it's nearly established for a decade from a establishment perspective for multiple organizations to settle in. Now, these places are nearly maxing out to their capacity and their opportunity to provide good value for money. Because as soon as you start looking at decreasing real estate, it's going to get that much more expensive. It's simple economics, right? So I see companies already investing in their future in tier 2, tier 3 cities where Bangalore maybe or Bengaluru was 25 years back. Notably, there are a few cities which are earmarked by the government as smart city projects, which they are pushing across so that the concentration of population in the major hubs decreases. So you cannot have a good quality life if you have majority of the people concentrated only on small pinpoint locations across a large geography that India is. So it mushrooms to places like which were known as good towns, but not known for their talent from an execution perspective for multinational companies. So Nasik, Nagpur, Jaipur, I would say Indore, these are the hubs which are mushrooming up and hopefully in the next 10 years would give a good reckoning to the major cities that we are in right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for those listeners, these are really where those opportunities lie, because as you say, those populations within those top cities is already staggering. And so it's and it's the same as what's happened in the UK. Everything grows outwards, right? So thank you so much. What do you see? And I feel like we kind of sort of touched on this now just with that conversation, but what do you see the future of India, 5-10 years? How do you anticipate that's going to look?
Okay. We have a lot of Gen Zs in the workplace right now. And I think Gen Z's mode of operations is more self-serve. It is more of owning the process rather than being the outsider. They want a say or they would require a say in multiple decisions that they are working on. So a mixture of that going forward, I think in the next, I don't know, I think next alpha is what the generations call. I've lost count of it. I am born in 1980, so I'm a mix between, I don't know, Generation X and the millennial bit, but I'm lost with all
Yeah.
these words that are coming up right now. So yeah, I'm happy to say that I'm born in 1980, and these are very, very new times for me as well to grasp, and I'm learning, and I would like to learn. So to come back to your question, in 10 years, I would say a lot of key towns today would be mushrooming smart cities, a lot of opportunities of growth where people could replicate the Bengaluru or the Hyderabad success story out there with a few learnings as well. Now, we've learned in Bangalore that, okay, we can develop a good infrastructure from a tech park, but all of that traffic flows into the same road which was not sustained or built to sustain such a large population. That's why we have traffic snarls, which are worth 2 hours at times. So
Yeah.
I would hope and wish in the next generation and the next cities, people would plan them better. People would plan them outside of the residential hubs and create a separate hub for such kind of activities. And you could have temporary accommodation side by side with workplaces so that it makes sense from a commute perspective. Then you would have an international airport next to it. So all these infrastructure projects are being worked upon in the pipeline. I just hope that they follow a trend of making sense and they have a good town planning sense to make it a better place. And I think we will. I'm quite confident. I'm not one of those cynics who would say that it's going to be like this. I feel positive about what we are going to see in the next 10 or 20 years by the time I retire.
Yeah, no, it's so exciting. And I think the point about the traffic and the commute is really important because the reality is like today that is a challenge, right? Trying to get from A to
Yeah.
B. And so again, like just pairing this back to travelers on the move, and sometimes people aren't staying on the doorstep because actually, even if you are on the doorstep, it could take quite a long time to get to the offices. And just thinking about that wellness perspective, and the fact is that within the Gen Z demographic, wellness it should be high on everyone's agenda, but particularly within the Gen Zs, versus some of the older generation where maybe we are working, with it's that sort of mantra of like work hard, that's what we've got to do, where theirs is all about balance. So
No, certainly. And I think today we need that balance.
yeah, I agree. We really do. It's healthy, isn't it? And so just segueing from that question in terms of your kind of optimism about the infrastructure and how that's going to develop to make things, international airports, shorter commutes. If you could name a couple of cities that you think that they're going to be the hotspots for that growth, where would you say?
Yeah, I would think a city in Rajasthan, which is known for its touristiness, is Jaipur. I see a lot of companies getting their bases attached over there. And another city with a ready infrastructure type of thing is Indore in the state of Madhya Pradesh. So these two cities, I would bank that in the next 10 years, I would see them as emerging as cities to reckon with and see a lot of growth in terms of manpower, talent going towards these cities to go in and settle down and work. And so the opportunity for other allied services like temporary accommodation and other relocation services, housing, all of these would then grow around them.
Okay, thank you. I want to just come back to one of the things you sort of said in your intro, which is around some of the opportunity for business travel. I think from our stance, it's been a challenging few years, right? With let's not mention that word again, but just navigating all the changes, and then of course people wanting to do more with less, cost consciousness, some of the geopolitical challenges that we're faced with, and the crises, etc. But with that has kind of come this surge in appetite from business travel, which for me is so exciting. It's a very different kind of business division, but seeing the marriage between global mobility and business travel for me is you know, it's just the future. And because I think we're really starting to see innovation, we're starting to see consolidation. And I just wondered what your stance was on general business travel within the
Sure.
accommodation world.
Sure. So I think it always makes sense to collaborate. Why? Because you would be having a business spend, you would be having your relocation spend, and they would be via two different departments. You would have a relocation department sitting within HR, and you would have business travel happening within the admin department or the travel desk department within your organization. It would make sense to do a reporting to see how much are you spending on both, and if you merge it
Yeah.
with something like getting economies of scale with one provider to give you a better rate at a different for a business travel than what you are getting today, because you are not doing justice by seeing how much relocation spend you are doing on temporary accommodation. So if you just do a little step back, take a bigger picture and collaborate, I see value where temp accommodation providers can give definite value to those who are not currently in the typical need or typical consumers of temp accommodation. They are more business travelers who go via a different channel of administration or via travel desk. We could look at seeing both, and if it makes sense for the company in terms of the cost consciousness, I think that would be a win-win situation for both the temp accommodation providers as well as for the client companies.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it forces the commerce service department industry to, we can't, operate in the way that we always have. We have to be different. And now is the time for change. And 2 years ago was the time for change. And I think it really is taking a step in the right direction. But being able to learn, how to be successful within business travel programs, as well as continuing to support global mobility, is really where we're going to kind of elevate ourselves as an industry. So, again, a topic that I am very passionate about, and yeah, I appreciate your insights and your take on it. So as we draw to a close, I can feel your passion for Bangalore, and I wanted to know, what is the best thing about living there? What is your favorite thing about, being from Bangalore?
Well, for starters, as I mentioned, the weather. I am born and brought up in the hot, sultry city of Mumbai. And the stuff that, and again, Mumbai is a fast-paced New York as compared to, I would say, Bangalore is a Denver, which is slow-paced, has its own charm. Mumbai, if you open Instagram today in India, there'll be a lot of comparisons between cities, and I don't need to add fuel to fire. But Mumbai, I would say, I would use a Hindi phrase and I'll explain it. So Mumbai is like my Janma Bhumi, the place where I've been born. But Bangalore has always been my Karma Bhumi, or the place where I work. So even when I was in Mumbai, while associated with the mobility world, most of the decision makers are sitting in Bangalore in India. And I used to travel a lot to this city, and I always had this connect that someday I might want to stay here. And I think with my recent job with Graebel, not so recent, 5 years back, I had the opportunity to move lock, stock, and barrel with my cats and dogs, and I did that. And I enjoyed the peace, I enjoyed the calm, and I absolutely love the pace of life, which is not slow. It is a pace of life. I'm not saying that you need to be super fast or you need to be super slow. At this time, this pace of life suits me. So I'm
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Everyone likes that pace of life. And I just love that you were the first employee in India at Graebel. I think that just must be so special when you think about kind of some of the growth that you've experienced since then. So we will wrap up there. I want to thank you so much for your amazing insights, your passion, your projections. Hopefully everyone that's listening and tuned in has taken a lot from it. I certainly have. And so a huge heartfelt thank you to Nowzad and to all of our listeners for tuning in. And there is going to be more to come on this. We have a lot to say on India. So watch this space, and thank you so much.